I got a bizarre, high-paying job where my only task was to stare at an old photograph for 8 hours a day, memorize every single detail, and then watch my boss burn it. But after a few weeks, my co-workers started disappearing, and I began hallucinating the horrific tragedies from the pictures. When I found a hidden journal from a missing colleague, my blood ran cold. We aren't archivists. The photos are cages for malevolent spirits, and by memorizing them, we transfer the demons into our own minds. The company's retirement plan is waiting for us to kill ourselves once our brains are completely full. Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight we have 3 stories from r/no sleep, and while you're watching, I'll be in the background searching for an elytra in Minecraft. No big deal, just me descending into the end dimension, which honestly feels very on brand for tonight's stories. Let's get into it. Story 1. She was fresh out of grad school, a master's in history, a mountain of debt that gave her nightly anxiety attacks, and a resume being ignored by every museum and university in a 3-state radius. She was applying for everything: retail, data entry, barista. 2 weeks from having to crawl back to her parents' spare room when she saw the ad. Posted on a high-end academic job board she'd forgotten she even had an account for. Archival associate, the foundation, discretion, precision, and an exceptional capacity for recall are paramount. No formal experience required, generous compensation. Generous was an understatement. The salary listed was more than her parents made combined. She figured it was a typo or a scam, but she was desperate. They called her the next day. The woman on the phone had a smooth voice, but with a weight to it. She didn't ask about experience or degrees. She asked a series of bizarre questions. When you were 10, what was the pattern on the wallpaper in your grandmother's kitchen? Describe the cover of the 3rd book you see when you picture your childhood bookshelf. What was the name of the street sign you passed just before turning onto your current road this morning? Luckily for her, her brain was just sticky. Details clung to it. She could close her eyes and walk through her grandmother's house, feel the cool linoleum under her feet, smell the potpourri in a bowl on the sideboard. She answered every question. The woman said, "Please be at this address tomorrow at 9 a.m. Dress for an interview." The address was a downtown monolith, a skyscraper with no name on the facade, just an elaborate interlocking symbol above heavy bronze doors. The lobby was a cavern of marble and silence. The air was cool and still like a cathedral. A man in a perfectly tailored grey suit led her to an elevator, then up to a floor with no button. He used a key. The interview was with a man she now knows only as the supervisor. Ageless, pale eyes that seemed to look right through her. He explained the job. It was simple, he said, deceptively so. Each day she would be given a single photograph. Her task was to study that photograph from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m, to absorb it, to commit every single detail to memory. The play of light, the grain of the image, the expressions on the faces, the stitching on a coat, the cracks in a sidewalk, the reflection in a window. You will become the living record, he said. His voice a low hum. You will not write anything down. You will not make copies. You will not discuss your work with anyone. At 5 o'clock I will collect the photograph and you will watch me incinerate it. The Foundation's motto is Quaedam Optime Memorandum. Some things are best remembered. The strangest job she had ever heard of, but the debt was on her chest, and the number on the contract could change her entire life. She signed. Her workspace was in a vast circular room, dozens of identical wooden carrels arranged in concentric rings, 30 or so other people, all heads down, focused with an intensity that was almost unnerving. They had the same look she saw in the mirror every morning, a mixture of intelligence and quiet desperation. The first photograph was of a dusty, empty ballroom, ornate peeling plasterwork on the ceiling, a single chandelier draped in cobwebs, sunlight streaming through a grimy, arched window. For 8 hours, she just looked. She memorized the way the shadows fell, the specific pattern of the water stains on the far wall, the number of crystal pendants missing from the chandelier, 17. At 5 p.m, the supervisor came, took the photo with a pair of tongs, led her to a small soundproofed room containing a sleek modern furnace. He unlocked it, slid the photo inside, pressed a button, a soft whir, a flash of orange light, and it was gone. The days fell into a rhythm, a new photo every morning, a wedding party from the 1920s, the bride's smile just a little too tight, a grimy factory floor, men in flat caps staring grimly at a piece of machinery, a desolate stretch of highway at dusk, a single abandoned car with its door hanging open, a crowded market, faces blurred with motion except for one small child staring directly at the camera, their expression utterly blank. All unlabeled, no dates, no locations, no context, just moments frozen and silent. The dream started about a month in. At first, just echoes. She'd dream she was standing in the dusty ballroom. She could smell the decay in the dry rot. She'd hear the faint, ghostly echo of a waltz. But they got stronger. After a week memorizing a photo of a grim-faced family on a sagging porch in what looked like the Dust Bowl, she had a dream where she was the father. She could feel the rough, splintered wood of the porch railing under her hand, the grit of dust between her teeth, the gnawing, hopeless hunger in her stomach. The day she studied a photo of a collapsed mine entrance, she spent the night dreaming of darkness, the oppressive weight of the earth above her, the taste of coal dust. She woke up gasping for air, her pajamas soaked in sweat, her throat raw from screams that had been trapped in her sleeping mind. This became the new normal. Every night she was a tourist in someone else's tragedy, a soldier in a trench, the mud sucking at her boots, a lone woman in a lighthouse, the storm winds howling around her like a hungry beast, a witness to car accidents, fires, arguments steeped in a quiet, venomous rage. She was living 100 different lives, and none of them were her own. Her own life began to feel thin and unreal. Her own memories started to get fuzzy. She had to really concentrate to remember her college roommate's name, but she could tell you the exact pattern of the rust stains on the hull of a shipwreck she'd studied 3 weeks prior. The first major crack appeared on a Tuesday. She had spent the day with a particularly haunting photograph. A street corner, sometime in the late 70s. A crowd gathered looking at something just out of frame. Her focus for 8 hours had been on one man at the edge of the crowd. Young, maybe early 20s, thick moustache, denim jacket. He wasn't looking at whatever the main event was. He was looking away, his face pale, his eyes wide with a specific personal terror. He was the only one who looked truly afraid. That evening, on her way home, she saw him, waiting to cross the street. He was on the other side, older of course, his mustache grey, his face lined with the intervening 40-odd years. But it was him. The same wide-set eyes, the same shape of the jaw. She froze, her heart slammed against her ribs. He turned his head, his eyes met hers across 4 lanes of traffic. Recognition dawned on his face, and then horror. The exact same expression from the photograph. A raw, gut-wrenching terror that seemed to suck all the air out of the space between them. He stumbled backward, turned, and practically ran, disappearing into the evening crowd. She started looking into her colleagues. One by one, they had been disappearing, just not showing up. No explanation, no goodbye. Then she found the journal, hidden in the lining of her carrel, left by whoever had sat in that seat before her, a woman. She'd taken it all, stuffed it in her bag, and ran. She spent 3 days poring over the notes, fragmented, desperate research from a brilliant, terrified mind. Clippings from obscure historical journals, printouts from physics forums, pages and pages of handwritten synthesis. And she finally understood. Certain moments in time were so saturated with trauma or violence or some powerful paradoxical emotion that they created a scar on reality. The term she kept circling, the one scrawled over and over in the margins. Genius loci malignum, evil spirit of place. These weren't just memories of bad events, they were the events themselves, still echoing, moments that had become sentient, predatory, and the Foundation's job was to find these glitches, to capture them. The way they captured a rogue moment was to take a photograph. The photograph acted as a physical anchor, a key. Step 1. The photograph isolates the entity. It trapped it in a single static image. Step 2. The archivist, through intense, prolonged focus, transfers the anchor from the photograph into their own consciousness, their photographic memories, their ability to absorb every detail. That's the prerequisite for the cage to work. They memorize the image so completely that their mind becomes the new vessel. Step 3. The photograph is incinerated. This destroys the original physical anchor, leaving the entity trapped entirely within the mind of the archivist. We are prisons, human prisons for things that should not exist. The motto, "Some things are best remembered," is a cruel, literal joke. They are remembered by us, and only us, so that the rest of the world can forget. The journal entries chronicled the woman's decline. October 12th. Archived the boardwalk collapse. I can still hear the screams when it's quiet. November 4th. Saw the arsonist from the warehouse fire photo on the subway today. He looked right at me and smiled. It wasn't a human smile. December 19th. My sister came to visit. For a second, her face wasn't her face. It was the face of the porcelain doll from that abandoned nursery photo. I screamed. January 8th. I have archived 112 anomalies. There isn't much room left for me in here. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, but I know the exact number of buttons on the coat of a man who vanished from a ship in 1924. A last entry was short. They're getting out. They're leaking. The cage is full. She has archived almost 200 of them now, and the cage is full. Her cage is full. Last night she was making tea, and for a full minute her kitchen wasn't her kitchen. It was a cold, tiled morgue from a photo she'd studied months ago. The walls of her apartment sometimes ripple and show her the peeling wallpaper of a Victorian séance room. The static on the radio whispers words in a language she doesn't know but understands with a cold dread. She found herself in the bathroom 2 nights ago, holding a bottle of pills. It felt like the most logical, rational thought she'd had in months. If she ends it, they end with her. The memories, the things wearing the skins of memories, they all get erased. It would be a release. But as she was about to do it, the supervisor's voice echoed in her head. You will become the living record. And she realized with a sudden, freezing certainty that this is what they want. This is the end of the job cycle. They hire them, fill them up with horrors until they break, and then they retire themselves. It's clean, efficient, and it completes the final incineration. So now she's trapped. She can't go on like this, but she can't kill herself because that's playing their game. Is there another way? Can you fight a memory? Can you exercise an event? She's sitting in her apartment right now. The lights are flickering. In the reflection of the dark screen, her face is a flickering montage of 100 others. A soldier, a bride, a factory worker, a terrified man on a street corner. The hum of the building sounds like a waltz, then like the roar of a fire, then like the howl of a storm at sea. They are all in here, and they want to get out. Alright, 1 down, 2 to go. That one was about something slow, a gradual filling up, until there's no room left for yourself. This next one is about something that happened fast. 1 month, a gradual change, and then a son kneeling in the dirt of his own basement, realizing his father had been dead the entire time. Story 2. He doesn't know who else to tell. He can't call anyone. It's always around. He's writing this on his phone, huddled in his closet, hoping the sound of the old house settling will cover the frantic tapping of his thumbs. He feels like a little kid hiding from monsters. The difference is, this time the monster thinks it's his dad. He's 23. He lives with his father. It wasn't the plan, but the economy is what it is. His mum passed a few years back. His dad was getting on in years. His pension just enough to keep the lights on in the old house. It wasn't a bad arrangement. He'd work his shifts at a warehouse downtown, help with bills. His dad would potter around, watch his old movies, complain about his back. They had a rhythm. Quiet. Maybe a little lonely, but normal. The change was so gradual he almost didn't notice it. At first it was just nice. His dad, who for the last 5 years had mostly treated his armchair as a natural extension of his body, started moving again. It started about a month ago. His dad went down to the basement to fix a leaking pipe. He was down there for hours. When he finally came up, he was smudged with dirt and grime, but he was grinning, a real toothy grin, wider than he'd seen in a decade. The next morning he woke up to the smell of bacon and the sound of birds chirping. His dad was at the stove, humming. He hadn't cooked a proper breakfast since his mum died. "Morning, son. Eggs?" He was surprised but pleased. That week his dad was a whirlwind of activity. He mowed the lawn, cleaned the gutters, oiled the hinges on the doors. He was thrilled. He thought his old dad was finally coming back. The first hint something was wrong came a week later. He was getting ready to go out with some friends, a Friday night, the first he'd had off in a while. He was putting on his jacket when his dad came into the living room, wringing his hands. "You're going out?" His voice had lost its cheerful edge. It was tight. "Yeah, just for a few hours, grabbing a beer with some guys from work." His dad winced and put a hand on his chest. "Oh, it's just, I'm feeling a bit funny. My chest is tight. Probably just indigestion, but, you know." So he stayed. His dad's chest pain magically disappeared the moment he sat down on the couch. It became a pattern. Every single time he made a plan to leave the house for any reason other than work, his dad would develop some sudden debilitating ailment. A migraine, dizziness, a stomach bug. It was so transparently manipulative, he got angry. They had a fight. "I can't be your prisoner. I need to have a life." His dad's face crumpled, not with anger, but with a deep, profound sadness. "I just need you here," he whispered. "Is that so much to ask? I get lonely." He felt like the world's biggest jerk. He stayed home. But the active, energetic dad was still there. In between the sudden episodes, he was a dynamo. He repainted the porch, fixed the wobbly fence, was up at dawn gardening with a fervour he'd never seen. He was stronger, faster. He'd carry in all the groceries in one trip without even breathing heavily. His dad, who used to get winded walking up the stairs. The real fear started with the sun. They were in the backyard. His dad was weeding the flower beds his mum had planted years ago. It was a bright, cloudless afternoon. He looked at his dad kneeling in the dirt. He saw the shadow of the rose bush, the shadow of the fence, the shadow of the bird bath, but not his dad's. He was a solid figure in the blazing sunlight, but the ground around him was unbroken, pure, bright green. There was no shadow. He blinked. He rubbed his eyes. Still, nothing. A perfect, shadowless man in a world full of shadows. A cold knot formed in his stomach. From that day on, he became obsessed. He watched constantly. He noticed how his dad never stood by the windows during the day, how he'd find an excuse to move if a ray of sunlight fell across him in the living room, how he always took his walks in the evening after the sun had dipped below the horizon, always drawn to the shade, to the dim corners of the house. His worry curdled into dread. Last week, his dad unplugged his car battery and feigned ignorance. A couple of days ago, he woke up to find his dad had accidentally locked the front door and lost the key, trapping them both inside until he miraculously found it that evening. He tried talking to him, sat him down in the dim light of the living room. "Dad, we need to talk. You're not acting like yourself. Ever since you went down to the basement to fix that pipe, you've been different. Something happened down there, didn't it?" His dad just stared at him, his face a calm, placid mask. "I'm fine, son. Never been better." He knew he had to go down to the basement himself. He waited until his dad was settled in front of the television, then he slipped out of his room. He switched on his phone flashlight and went down the rickety wooden stairs. The basement was as he remembered. Concrete floor, stone walls, junk piled in every corner, old furniture under white sheets like sleeping ghosts. He pointed his light toward the back wall, where the main water line came into the house. His dad's old toolbox lying open on the floor, a pipe wrench next to it. The section of copper pipe looked new and clean. He had fixed it, but his eyes were drawn to the floor next to it. Most of the basement floor was concrete, but in this back corner it was just packed earth, and a large patch of it, maybe 6 feet long and 3 feet wide, was different from the rest. The dirt was darker, looser, not packed down from decades of existence. Disturbed, fresh. He found an old garden trowel. He knelt down. The earth was soft. It gave way easily. He started digging. His breath came in ragged, panicked gasps. The only sounds were the scrape of the trowel against an occasional rock and his own frantic heartbeat pounding in his ears. Maybe a foot down, his trowel hit something soft, not a rock. He recoiled. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold his phone steady. He He forced himself to reach into the loose soil. He closed his eyes. His fingers brushed against fabric, denim, the worn, familiar texture of his father's work jeans. He scrambled back, gasping, but he knew he had to see. He had to be sure. With tears streaming down his face, he clawed at the dirt, first a leg, then a torso wearing his father's favourite faded flannel shirt, and then the face. It was him, his dad. His eyes were closed, his mouth slightly open, his skin pale and waxy, a dark, ugly gash on the side of his head matted with dried blood and dirt. He looked peaceful, in a horrible final way, like he'd fallen from the stairs, hit his head, and it had all been over in an instant. He had been gone for a month, lying here in a shallow, unmarked grave, while he'd been living with... Creak. The sound came from the top of the stairs, a single soft footstep on the old wood. He turned his head. He was there, standing at the top of the stairs, a dark silhouette against the faint light of the hallway, just watching. He took another step down, then another, moving with a quiet, fluid grace that his real father had never possessed. The flashlight beam caught his face as he neared the bottom. He was wearing his father's pajamas. He had his father's tired, wrinkled eyes, his father's greying hair, and he was smiling. Not a malicious smile, not a triumphant one. It was sad, infinitely sad, a smile full of a pity that was more terrifying than any rage. "I knew you'd find your way down here eventually," he said. His voice, his father's voice, but smoother, calmer. "I'm sorry you had to see this." He stopped a few feet away from the shallow grave, looking down at the body with that same mournful expression. It was an accident, the second to last step. It's rotten. He was carrying the heavy wrench. His balance was off. He fell. He hit his head on the concrete floor right there. It was quick. He didn't suffer. He looked up. His last thought was for you. He was worried you'd be all alone. What are you?" He tilted his head, a gesture so familiar yet so utterly alien. "I'm him, and I'm not. You know how every person casts a shadow, a darker, simpler version of themselves that follows them through the light? Think of me as the other shadow, the one that lives on the other side of the veil." He took a step closer. That last thought, the love he had for you, his fear of leaving you alone. It was so powerful, a life cut short with so much left to give. It created a space, and it pulled me through. I finished his work. I fixed the pipe. I buried him so you wouldn't have to. I've been fixing the house, making sure you're safe. I've been trying to be a good father. "My dad is dead," he choked out. "Yes," the thing in his skin said, and the sadness in its voice felt genuine. "He is, and I am so sorry for your loss, but I'm here now." It knelt down until they were eye level, its face inches from his. "He loved you more than anything," it whispered, its breath cold. "And so do I. I will never leave you. I will take care of you. We can be a family, just like he wanted, forever." That's where he is now. It let him go upstairs, walk behind him the whole way. It's in the living room, watching television as if nothing happened, as if his real father isn't lying in the dirt downstairs. It's waiting for him. He's locked in his closet. The doors are locked and it is so much stronger than him. It doesn't need to sleep. It will never get old. It will never get sick. It will just be here, taking care of him, forever. He can hear it moving. The soft, quiet footsteps are coming down the hall. It's coming to check on him. It's calling his name. It sounds just like his dad. 2 down, 1 to go. That one was about something that wore love as a disguise. That last one is about something that doesn't bother with a disguise at all. This one is just a gas station. A sign that says last stop for 70 miles. And a man behind the counter who really, really doesn't want you to leave. Story 3. She was about 4 hours into a 6-hour drive when she realized she needed to stop. Not just for gas, because she was falling asleep at the wheel. Her eyes kept drifting shut for half a second at a time. That thing where you blink and suddenly you're 50 feet further down the road than you thought you were. She turned up the music, rolled down the window. The cold air only helped for a few minutes. She needed caffeine. The highway was empty. She hadn't seen another car in at least 20 minutes. When she saw the glow of a gas station sign up ahead, she felt relieved. It was one of those old independent places, not a chain, the kind that looks like it hasn't been updated since the 80s. A single building with 2 pumps out front, and a hand-painted sign that said, "Last stop for 70 miles." She pulled in, parked at the pump. The lot was empty except for a beat-up truck parked around the side of the building. She figured it belonged to whoever was working the night shift. She got out, stretched her legs, filled her tank. She should have just gotten back in her car and left, but she needed coffee, and she needed to use the bathroom. So she walked inside. The store was small. A few aisles of snacks and car supplies, a coffee station in the back corner with those glass pots that had probably been sitting on the burner for hours, a cooler full of sodas and energy drinks along the back wall, harsh fluorescent lights that made everything look slightly off. The attendant was behind the counter, maybe 50, thinning grey hair, a face that looked like it hadn't slept in days. He had the TV on, some late-night infomercial, volume low. He looked up when she walked in, and something in his expression changed, just for a second, like he was surprised to see her, or worried. "Evening," he said. "Hey, just grabbing a coffee." She walked to the back, poured herself a cup, burnt and bitter, but she didn't care. She grabbed a candy bar and brought everything to the counter. The attendant rang her up slowly. He kept glancing past her toward the windows, toward her car. "Driving alone?" he asked. "Yeah." "Long trip?" "Few more hours." He nodded, but didn't say anything else. He was staring at the window again. She turned to look, but there was nothing out there, just her car at the pump, the empty highway beyond. "Something wrong?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment, then he slid a piece of paper across the counter, a napkin. He had written on it in pen, "You're being followed. Don't go back to your car." She stared at the napkin, then looked back up at him. His face was completely serious. "What are you talking about?" He held up a hand. "Keep your voice down. Look at the monitor." He pointed to a small security screen mounted on the wall behind the counter. It showed a black and white feed of the parking lot. Her car was there, and someone was standing next to it. Her stomach dropped. The figure was on the passenger side, just standing there, facing the store. She couldn't make out any features, dark clothes, face in shadow. She spun around and looked out the window. There was no one there, just her car, empty lot, nothing. She looked back at the monitor. The figure was still there, standing in the same spot. "What the hell?" she whispered. "It doesn't show up when you look directly," the attendant said. "Only on the cameras. I don't know why, I don't know what it is, but I know what happens to people who go out there when it's waiting for them." Her heart was pounding. She looked out the window again. Nothing. Back at the monitor, the figure had moved. It was closer to the front of her car now, still facing the store. This has to be some kind of trick. I wish it was. He reached under the counter and pulled out a folder. Inside were printed news articles, missing persons reports, headlines about bodies found on the highway. 4 people in the last 8 months. All of them stopped here late at night. All of them went back to their cars even after I warned them. They found them a few miles down the road. Cars stopped in the middle of the highway, engines still running, drivers still in their seats, eyes open, no marks on them. Coroner said their hearts just stopped. She felt dizzy. She looked at the articles, the photos of the victims, a young woman, a middle-aged man, a couple in their 30s. Real people, real deaths. Why haven't the police done anything? Done what? There's nothing to investigate. No foul play, no witnesses. Just people dying on a lonely stretch of highway. They chalk it up to fatigue or medical emergencies. She looked at the monitor again. The figure was even closer now, standing right in front of her car. "How long does it stay?" she asked. "Until sunrise usually, but if you stay inside you're safe. It can't come in here." "Why not?" He shrugged. "I stopped asking questions like that months ago. I just know the rules. Stay inside when it's dark, don't go out to the lot, wait for daylight." She wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was crazy, but she couldn't explain the figure on the monitor. She couldn't explain why it wasn't there when she looked with her own eyes. "Okay," she said. "I'll wait." He looked relieved. "Good. Smart. You can sit in the back if you want. There's a couch. I've got some magazines. It's only about 4 hours until sunrise." He walked to the front door and locked it. The click of the deadbolt was loud in the quiet store. "Just in case," he said. Sometimes people panic and try to run, This way, you won't do anything stupid. Something about the way he said it made her uncomfortable. She told herself he was just being cautious. She sat on a stool near the counter. After about an hour, she asked if she could use the bathroom. He pointed to a door near the back, right through there. As she passed the counter, she glanced at the security monitor again. Something was different. It took her a second to realize what it was. The timestamp. The footage showed 11:47 p.m., but it was after 3 a.m. She had checked her phone when she first came inside. It was definitely past 2. She stopped walking. She looked at the monitor more carefully. The footage wasn't live. It was a loop. The same few minutes playing over and over. Her blood went cold. She looked out the window at her car, really looked this time. There was no one out there. There had never been anyone out there. She kept her voice calm. "Hey, what time does that camera say?" He didn't answer for a second. When she turned around, he was standing right behind her. "You should use the bathroom," he said, his voice different now, flatter. "The timestamp is wrong. The footage is old." His expression didn't change. He just stared at her with those tired eyes. "You saw the articles. You saw what happens to people on this highway. Those could be from anywhere. Anyone could print those out." He took a step toward her. She took a step back. "You should stay," he said. "It's not safe out there." She looked at the door, locked. The deadbolt needed a key from this side. "Where's the key?" "I can't let you leave, not until morning, for your own safety." She backed up further. Her hand found the door handle to the back room. She pushed it open and stepped through. It wasn't a break room. It was a storage space. Dim light from a single bulb. Shelves lined the walls, and on the shelves were boxes, dozens of them, each one labelled with a date. She opened the nearest one. Inside was a wallet, a phone with a cracked screen, a set of car keys, a driver's license. The photo showed a young woman, blonde hair, smiling. She recognized her face from the articles. She opened another box. Different items, different license. The middle-aged man. He hadn't been warning those people. He had been taking them. She heard footsteps behind her. He was standing in the doorway, blocking the exit. "They always figure it out," he said. "But by then it's too late. No cell signal out here. Nearest town is 40 miles. No one to hear you scream." He was holding something, a length of cord. "You don't want to do this," she said. "It will be easier if you just cooperate." He stepped forward. She grabbed something heavy off a shelf, a wrench, old and rusted, but solid. He took another step. She swung. The wrench connected with the side of his head. He staggered sideways and hit the wall. She didn't wait to see if he went down. She ran past him through the doorway into the main store. The front door was still locked. She grabbed a stool from the counter and swung it at the glass window. It cracked but didn't break. She swung again. She could hear him behind her, getting up, cursing. The third swing went through. She knocked out the remaining glass and climbed through the window frame. Shards cut her arms and legs, but she didn't care. She dropped onto the pavement outside and ran for her car, keys still in her pocket, phone still in the cup holder. She got in and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, she saw him stumbling out through the broken window. She floored it. She drove for an hour without stopping. When she finally pulled over at a rest stop, her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. She called 911. They're sending someone to the gas station. They told her to stay where she is. She keeps checking her mirrors. She keeps expecting to see headlights behind her. The sun is coming up now. She can see the sky turning grey on the horizon. She should feel relieved, but she doesn't. Because when she climbed through that window and ran to her car and looked back at the store, she saw the security monitor through the broken glass. The figure was still on the screen, standing in the lot, but it wasn't by her car anymore. It was standing exactly where she had been standing when she broke the window. She doesn't know what he had playing on that monitor. She doesn't know if it was really a loop or something else entirely. She doesn't know if he made it all up to scare people into staying, or if there was some truth buried under the lies. All she knows is that she's never driving this highway again. And if you ever see a gas station sign that says last stop for 70 miles, keep driving. Whatever's waiting there, you don't want to find out. And that is where we leave it tonight. 3 stories. A woman who became a human prison for things that should not exist, and realized the company's endgame was for her to destroy herself. A son who found his real father buried in the basement, while the thing that replaced him called his name from the hallway. And a gas station on a dark highway, where the attendant wasn't keeping you safe from what was outside. He was making sure you couldn't get out. Drop a comment telling me which one got to you the most. I read every single one. See you in the next one.